I was in Ecuador from 2017 through 2019 as part of the education program there, working to partner with the Ministry of Education, doing a variety of education projects related to English teaching and teacher training. So I'm happy to share a little bit more about that later on as well. And yeah, just really excited to get to know you all a bit better. Thanks.
Thank you, Daisy. Can we have the representative from Burlington?
Hi, I'm Tiana Brown. I'm a senior planner at Burlington. I've been with the company for about 4 years, and I work in juniors, junior bottoms specifically. And I have extensive retail experience from another off-price retailer, Ross. So at this point, I've been in retail for about 12 years doing planning. I have a location planning experience, as well as chain and store experience. So it's nice to meet everyone, and I look forward to speaking with the students. Thanks.
Thank you, Tiana. Can we have our representative from GSK?
Hi. Go ahead. No, I want to say it's actually two of us here. So no worries.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
You're fine. Hi, everyone. So my name is Kai Deoduwaye. I do prefer Kai, so Kai is perfectly fine. I've been in Burlington for about 2 years. So right now, currently in my role, I focus as a campus recruiter. So I have a range of 12 schools that fall under my responsibility, Temple being one of my schools. But I focus on recruitment for intern talent across the country, for our buy-in internship, our plan allocations, finance, and IT. I also recruit for some of our full-time roles. So I focus on most of the technical roles that we have here at Burlington. So whether it looks like plan allocations or maybe our finance development program, in which I recruit for as well. I grew up in Philly, so have a lot of ties to Temple and essentially the neighborhood. So super excited to be here. I've been in retail for about 4 years. I actually worked at Target, so I do know Arkita. So it's great to see you, but super excited to be here and talk to you all today.
Thank you, Kai. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
I leave you out. And then our representative or representatives from GSK.
Hi, my name is Giovanni Lane. I am an R&D, HR, talent, and I&D manager. Been with the company going on 12 years now. And if you don't know, GSK is a global healthcare company that makes medicines, vaccines, and consumer healthcare products. Really happy to be here with you all today to kind of share my experience as a former senior scientist, now working in the I&D space within HR. And I don't know if my colleague, Mike Reed, is on as of yet. He might be stuck in the lab.
Okay, well, thank you. We can go on to the mayor's office, the representative from the mayor's office.
Hey folks, my name is Jillian Lopez and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the volunteer engagement manager at the mayor's office of civic engagement and volunteer service. Everything at the mayor's office has the longest title ever. MOSEVS, as my office is called, is housed under the Office of Public Engagement, and our mission is all about Office of Public Engagement. It's making government accessible to all Philadelphian residents, and then my office is about reducing barriers to engage in service, whether that is doing a year of national service with AmeriCorps or engaging in volunteerism within our own communities. So I've been there for about a year and a half, a year of which was spent working from home with COVID. And prior to joining the mayor's office, my whole experience was in the nonprofit sector, working with volunteers through that capacity, planning events. And I even got to work with Kelly at Big Brothers Big Sisters for a good while here in Philly. So I'm very excited to get to know you all a little bit better today.
Thank you, Jillian. And can we have our representative from Subaru?
Thank you, Maddie. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Estes, and I've been with Subaru for about 3 years now. We're a car company. We're right across the bridge in Camden, New Jersey, but we are more than a car company, and I have the honor to really work on our Love Promise, which is our, excuse me, our commitment to our community in which we live and we work. I'm a marketing manager for That Love Promise, and I oversee brand partnerships with TerraCycle, so that's Subaru Loves Earth, Learning, so AAAS, Adopt a Classroom. I manage those charity partners and develop cause marketing campaigns. So I went to Penn State, and I'm actually a Temple MBA student.
Oh, wow, that's very nice. Thank you, Ashley. And last but not least, can we get the representative from INROADS?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanisha Brisbane, and I am a University Relations Manager at INROADS. So my job is very HR and recruitment focused. INROADS is a nonprofit leadership development organization, and we focus heavily on professional development, training, coaching, mentorship, and paid summer internship opportunities for students. What makes the organization unique is that we have been in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space for over 50 years. And so we definitely take a lot of pride in that. And so I'm very, very happy and excited to be here. I've been with INROADS for the last 6 years, and my focus is to recruit students into our leadership development program. And again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity.
Thank you. I'm going to circle back to one more representative, Michael from GSK. If he could just go ahead and introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Reed. I hope you guys can hear me through this mask. I'm actually at work, so I have to wear this mask. But so I work for GSK. I'm in our biopharmaceutical manufacturing facility. Actually, a proud Temple alum. Just finished my MBA last August. So that was great. I'm heavily involved with Giovanni in our diversity recruitment efforts and all of our I&D initiatives here. From Atlanta, I went to Georgia Tech, got my degree in chemical engineering. And so yeah, now I'm up here in Philadelphia. I work as a chemical process engineer, and we are actively looking to increase our I&D efforts and recruit more diverse talent throughout the area.
Great, thank you. So before we move into our roundtable discussion, I want to invite any students that just came in late or just came in and don't know what we're doing in the chat. If you could just put your name, your major, and your expected graduation dates, just so we can know who's in here. But thank you again for all of the employers to come in and speak. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the first question. How would you guys define an equitable workplace? And what initiatives are taking place currently to make your workplace more inclusive and equitable? I think we could use the raise hand function if that would be easier, and I could call on you just so people aren't talking over each other. So I'll read the question again. How would you define an equitable workplace? And what initiatives are taking place currently to make your workplace more inclusive and equitable? So any employer can go ahead and give their take on that. I will. And I see in the chat, you said, can we add questions in the, oh yes, I can put the question in the chat.
Okay.
Everyone. Okay, let's go ahead with Daisy. I think I saw your hand first.
Awesome. So hi, everyone. Again, I'm Daisy. So I think regarding this question, I'll first just give a little bit of background on the Peace Corps. So for the Peace Corps, for those who don't know, we are an intercultural service organization. So the mission of Peace Corps is to promote world peace and friendship. That's been sort of at the core of the organization since it was started back in 1960. Peace Corps has definitely evolved throughout the years, I think in many positive ways, recently within the past decade, and including more initiatives for diversity in our volunteer body. But with this mission of promoting world peace and friendship, we recognize that there can be no world peace or friendship without justice and equity. So, as an organization, we stand to, make statements against the marginalization of people, and that's both in our country and abroad. And so we have volunteers who serve all over the world, mainly in developing nations. And so our volunteers are living and working at the community level to support projects across many different fields, including health, education, youth development, community economic development. So these issues of equity are really central to our work and our mission. I think one way that we strive for equity in the workplace is to ensure that our volunteer body, our domestic staff at headquarters, and our international host country local staff, that diversity is reflected in those different bodies. And so, allowing diverse members to bring a variety of diverse perspectives and solutions to the development issues in the countries that we serve. In addition to diversity within our actual, members and staff and volunteers, that also comes with hand in hand with inclusion. So ensuring that we have a culture within the organization that connects all of these people, right? That connects volunteers to staff, to the people that we serve, in and outside the organization. And that we believe hopefully will encourage collaboration, flexibility, fairness, and also to leverage that diversity throughout the organization so that everyone feels that they can participate and contribute to their full potential. So that's our goal. We have different initiatives that I guess, just quickly, the second part of that question is, what are some I think initiatives, that our agency is addressing. So we are a federal agency, so we work under the umbrella of the federal government. So with that, there was a recent executive order signed by our president on advancing racial equity and the support for underserved communities throughout the federal government. So that's something that we're really taking, putting at the forefront of our mission. And so through that initiative, we have, diversity and inclusion training for both volunteers and staff. It's conversations that we're having, with the volunteers, with the people that we serve on a daily basis. And with training, of course, there needs to be also open-mindedness, because we do serve with so many different people around the world. So having intercultural competence is really central to our work. So I can go into detail maybe a little bit more later in the breakout groups, but I'm just going to kind of start off with that.
Thank you, Daisy. I will go to, I hope I pronounced your name right, Tanisha, that's correct?
That is correct.
And then after Tanisha, Marquita, and then we will go into breakout rooms.
Okay, so I think a big part of having an equitable workforce is starting with the culture of the organization. So having a diverse and inclusive and equitable workforce is something that has to happen over time through culture from, really from the top down. And I think in really creating that environment, there has to be an environment where employees are comfortable, employees are allowed to be authentic to themselves. Employees have to be in a place where they are able to share perspectives, ideas, and expertise. And as far as initiatives go to help make sure that that happens, certainly a big part of that is opportunities for mentorship. I think that a big part of retaining diverse talent is having mentorship, having opportunities for promotion and training and things like that has to happen in order to facilitate that type of environment. In addition to, other things that need to be ongoing, like unconscious bias training and sensitivity training and things like that, to help to foster an environment where we can be more diverse and more inclusive and more equitable.
Thank you. And lastly, Marquita can go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, how do you define an equitable workplace? I think as leaders of color, it's very important to provide access to more within an organization. And a lot of organizations, from a corporate perspective, it's easier to get into the environment than to advance through the environment. So like when you think of that, what is an organization actually doing to provide advancement to people of color, or to create a more equitable environment? I agree with the other two ladies who spoke around the need to create open spaces to allow inclusivity and to create a culture where people can be who they are, regardless of where they're at, regardless of who they have to speak to, regardless of who they have to interact with. I know for us at Target, we service communities where 75% of the US population lives within 10 miles of a Target. Essentially, so what Target has done this past year has created some very tangible goals of how they want to increase representation of people of color, women of color, how to exactly advance people of color. So when companies talk through what they want to do, that's always awesome for me, but what can we hold that's tangible? What are some specific goals we can go after that not just the HR leaders are going after, but those who are in positions of power, those operators who are in positions of power can truly go after? It's very important for all people to be comfortable in the work environment that they're in. And the only way that that can be created is if it starts from the top. Programs are created. Programs are just as important as the bottom line, as different metrics that each company have to hit. And then it's not just this is what we're doing in 2021, but this is what we're going to do over the course of the next 20, 25, 30, 35 years. Because if you think about it, we have hundreds of years of change that has to be implemented. So like, what are companies doing to create 100 additional years to create that change?
Thank you, Marquita. Michael, I see your hand, but I want to be aware of the time that we have. So I want to go ahead and move forward. But I thank you guys for everything that you had to say. I think you guys made some great points, and I love hearing about the different initiatives that you guys have going on in your company and the things to think about different companies. Like you said, Marquita, going forward, this is not just the now, but it's a forever. What's the future?
Maddie, I'm just going to jump in. So employers, you will have a chance to, in the breakout rooms, to share more about your initiatives going forward. You'll have 2 breakout rooms, and Maddie's going to explain that. And then at the end, we will have some discussion to recap too. So thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you. So I hope everyone enjoyed that discussion. We will be splitting you guys up into different breakout rooms. We will first go into our first session. You will be placed randomly into these breakout rooms for 15 minutes, and there will be different discussion topics in each room. So I'll just go over them briefly. The employers will have the questions, so you will get the questions again. Our first breakout room will be about professionalism and what that means to you. Our second breakout room will be about what is authenticity to you. And then our third breakout room will be, how do you define success? Each room will have 3 employers, and you will be in there for 15 minutes, and then we will come back, debrief, and you will be able to select your own room. So this first time you're going in, you'll be automatically placed in that room, and the second time you go in, you'll be able to select your own breakout room.
Employers, if I accidentally place you in the wrong room, please feel free to come back here and I'll place you in the correct room.
All righty, so Callie will go ahead and put you all in your breakout rooms.
So I really think that was very much inspirational. Thank you.
I agree, Noemi. It was a very inspiration. I don't want to say inspirational. Yeah, very inspiring. It was a very inspiring conversation that was had in our breakout room. Anyone else want to speak? You can also use the chat function as well before we go into our next breakout rooms. I can speak on our room that I was in talking about success. I think it was great that we heard from different women talking about different tactics to not measure success in the same way that everyone else does, because success is defined by success isn't necessarily the same for everyone, and it's also in phases for the different stage of your life. So I think that that's something that was a great takeaway. And also taking social media fast, I think that that's so important as well in defining success, because we get caught up in what other people think. So that's definitely something that I will take from my room. Anyone else want to speak, either in the room or in the chat? Alrighty, if not, then we will go into our second breakout room. This will be our last one. So if you guys, Callie will open it up and you guys get to pick which room you will go into. You can also use the chat function as well if you don't feel like speaking. Go ahead, Noemi.
Hey everyone again. My name is Noemi. So I was in the group of authenticity. I had a bunch of wonderful people. I had Kai, Tiana, Giovanni, Daisy, and I think I'm missing one other person. I just can't see them on my screen. I'm so sorry if I missed you. But we had a wonderful conversation about authenticity. One of the big things that I thought was very important to mention for anyone in this just space right now that is of color, or a woman, or even a man of color, is, I don't know about everyone else, but I took senior seminar for my final semester at Temple, and they taught us a bunch of things that you should do, and interviews and kind of different things to keep informed of. But one of the big points that actually Kai brought up from the Burlington stores, he mentioned that if you are a person of color, ask them about representation in your company for your identity and stuff. See if those people are there, what levels of employment are they at, because I feel like, this is a personal opinion, I feel that that also allows and represents their growth in the company too, as a minority individual, because you can just see where those individuals are. And again, not saying if they don't have minority representation that you can't grow, but it does show where the company is overall. So I just wanted to point that out for the rest of the just students and individuals in this chat.
Thank you, Noemi. Anyone else want to speak on what they talked about? Any employers can also share anything that they liked or heard any students say, or what they bounced off of other employers as well. Okay, well.
I'll add a little bit if you don't mind.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, we talked, it was really interesting how we talked about how to be authentic, but also to make sure that you are staying competitive for the job itself, like to not maybe limit your chances due to bias in the interview process. So it was really helpful for me to think of those as maybe two things that need to balance. So you are yourself, but you may not be disclosing all the information about you and your personal life in the initial interview. But then once you've gotten the offer and or once you're employed, then you can bring a whole lot more of yourself and still feel like you're there in a position to now use your position or privilege to make changes. And I really liked that concept. So I know that it was Jasmine and Marquita and a couple of other folks talked about that, Andrea, and thank you very much for that. It was really great discussion.
I guess I would like to add something to that. I wasn't in on that part of the discussion, but I know that we recently had a panel of candidates interview, and there was one candidate, who it was very clear that she was not sharing who she was authentically. And so I would say that, you want to kind of walk lightly on that rope, if you will, of holding yourself back, because the employer, the potential hiring manager, might be able to pick up on those things. And we want you to be your authentic self. We want to understand exactly, who you are, and not just understand who your representative is, because we want to understand, the different diversity dimensions that you have, so that we can know who we're dealing with, know if you fit into our culture just as much as you want to understand if we fit into yours.
Giovanni, can I throw that back at you and ask, what do you as the employer or the hiring manager do in that situation to kind of show that the student or the candidate can be their authentic self in that process? Are there processes that you, I guess, do?
So, I mean, we can't do but so much because that's who the person is representing for themselves. The only thing we can do is not make the offer because they're not being 100% themselves, and then give them the feedback for next time to, you know, be authentic to who you are, so that when you do go into another organization for another interview, that the hiring manager or the recruiter understands who is actually presenting themselves. And I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on that, but.
Yeah, I'll just, for clarity, when the question that Lynn was asking was pertaining to like, if you're a single mother and things like that. And I know that as a recruiter, and I recruit personally a lot of non-exempt folks that are making between like, you know, minimum wage. And typically the questions that they're asking, or not even the questions that they're asking, they're divulging a lot of information that as a recruiter, we do not need to know. But I find that a lot of Black and Brown communities is kind of like, you know, they say a lot of, or we say a lot of, I'll be honest. And it's like, honestly, it's great, but you don't got to tell me about your divorce. You don't got to tell me that you got this going on. You've been in the house, you know. So these are things that can all generate bias in a recruiter's mind as to why they should not go with you. You can have the most bubbly personality, but if you start divulging personal information, that could be something where they could be like, they got a lot going on in their life, let me not, right? Then that's the issue, because we're not allowed to ask those types of questions. Mm-hmm. So that's I think what at least we were talking about in our conversation.
No, thanks for adding that clarity, because absolutely, you know, bias can always creep into the room. And so you want to, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, Jasmine. But, you know, I really appreciate you adding that for clarity so that I can understand exactly where the conversation went. Mm-hmm. And, you know, just want for all of you guys that are looking to come into the workforce to really think about how you're presenting yourself, representing yourself, and, you know, really practice those behavioral questions and representing yourself as authentically as you possibly can.
I'm going to spin on the authenticity question, because I think I'm like interviewing people now, and I interview people all the time, but I'm not an HR specialist. I want to let me just preface, but something that I've done in the past to try to pull some things out of some of the candidates is when I look at their resume, I might see that they are involved in clubs. And let's say my job values creativity, and you don't tell me that you're an artist or that you've put on programs or you volunteer. And so you're just sticking to answering the questions as they're asked of you. And then when the time comes for you to elaborate or to give an example of something that you've done where it shows your talents, I think it hurts you. And so I'd encourage you to please do not shy away from talking about your cool factor and the things that you do that might be like a talent of yours that you don't realize. We might value someone who knows how to use InDesign, who knows how to use and just plays around on like Photoshop because you do that on the side for a side business. Stuff like that is another way of showing authenticity.
Yeah. That's definitely a great point. And something I wanted to really touch on really quickly is I always joke, or as I prep candidates for the final round interview, I always say, like, come prepared with questions. The same way that we're interviewing you, that you should be interviewing us to make sure this is the right opportunity in the right space for you. So something I always touch on is to make sure that you ask those right questions to make sure the company that you're going to meets the same core values that you have. That you're like your non-negotiables is essentially the things that you can't change or that you want in the company that you're going to. So make sure you hone in on those. Make sure that you talk about representation in regards to people that look like you. What does development look like? What does leadership look like? And what change do they make it to make sure it is an inclusive and a diverse workplace? And then as you get into the door, always bring your authentic self to the table. I know it's easier said than done, but we think about here. We think about having those conversations and kind of having that dialogue. But make sure that you're always open to learn. Make sure that you have that dialogue when you have opportunity at the table. Educating somebody might get tiring at times, but I think with initially with that conversation, it goes a long way. And you don't know who needs to hear that. But I think as you come into a company, that every company is not going to be the right company for you, and it kind of really is what it is. But so find that company that essentially lives and resides in the same core values that's going to help you grow and develop you no matter how you look, and that you're going to have an inclusive and diverse experience.
And then just to add to what Kai said, because I agree so much with like coming with great questions. It goes a long way when, as an interviewer, I can tell that you did your research before you come with questions. I can tell the difference as someone interviewing if like you're asking sort of like the stock questions of like, and you should Google questions I should ask during an interview. And I know it goes a long way. Like if I can tell if you went to my organization's website and like read about our programs or like read about our leadership before you ask those questions. It goes a long way to be like, oh, this person does their research. That is usually super helpful as well.
One of the things that I do in the interview process to really determine whether a candidate is authentic is that I will ask, is there something on your resume or that's not on your resume that you think is important for me to know about you? And so asking that question will allow me to, determine some of those soft skills or maybe some of the things that are important to the candidate that's not necessarily on the resume. And that's a good way to help gauge authenticity.
I love that question, by the way. I haven't heard it in like years. I think my first internship, intern manager asked me that back in like 2013. So definitely love the question.
Another thing about good questions. So if you're having a bad interview, let's say you didn't answer all the questions the way you wanted to answer them, and so now you're doubting yourself, or you think that they don't really see how smart you are and how much how you think. Questions are a strategy for you to bounce back from an interview that might be going off course. And so it gives people, I actually always judge people on the questions that they ask because it shows a little bit of how they think, like what they're thinking about. So you can use that as a way to show the person who's interviewing you that, hey, actually, I did think about the strategy of your business. And it just gives them a little bit of getting into your brain. So always ask good questions and use it as a strategy, not just to bounce back from an interview that might be going off course, but just to show people that, hey, I have smart ideas and good questions come from that.
All righty. Thank you so much for all of your inputs. I think this was a great conversation. I had a great time in my breakout rooms, and I feel as though from the different people speaking that everyone else did as well. So I want to first thank everyone, both students and employers, for coming out today. And definitely the employers for sharing all of your input and all your insight on the workforce, what to do in different situations. I really appreciate that. Also, students, these are great people to connect with. A lot of these people, if you missed it in the beginning, are in recruiting. So wink, wink, you want to connect with these people. So I would just, well, first I want to ask the employers if it is okay for students to connect with you. If it is okay for them to connect, please let us know if they can. You can let me know in the chat, or you can come off the mute really quickly and either put your email address in the chat or drop your your name on LinkedIn down below. I know I will be looking for you all on LinkedIn, but if you can, actually, I should ask employers, if you would like students to connect with you, can you please drop your name on the LinkedIn or the email address, whichever one you prefer. And I think that you guys should all take advantage of this if you don't already have a job or an internship ahead of time. All righty.
Awesome. Thanks, Maddie.
No problem.
So I do want to just really thank the employers again. This was amazing, really great conversations. For all the students, we just have a couple of announcements that we want to share out before we wrap up. This was a really great event. It wouldn't have been possible without Erin and all of her work. And I think our collaboration, and she's going to just explain a little bit again about how you can continue to connect with us and connect with the events that we'll be hosting through the Careers in Color initiative.
So this is part of, like Callie said, our Careers in Color initiative, and we host new events each semester. So we hope you'll join us again in the fall. I'll also include a link in the chat to our newsletter, which goes out twice a month. And you can follow us also on Instagram at TU Careers in Color. Callie and I are going to be hosting drop-in hours to review job and internship strategies on Handshake every Monday and Thursday starting April 15th. And if you need to schedule an appointment, a longer appointment with our career coaches, all of our services are virtual and you can do so through Handshake. Today's event is also eligible for suitable points for Fox's Leadership Development Program. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly so that you all can take a picture of the QR code. Can everyone see that for students? Okay. And then thanks again to everybody for joining us and have a great rest of your afternoon.
And thank you, Maddie,
Thank you.
for moderating.
Have a great one.
Employers, if you'd like to connect with us afterwards to debrief or have anything else you'd like to share with us, feel free to connect via email, and Erin and I would love to continue these conversations.
This was a great.
I was very, I think, open with my team about, what questions were okay and what things could I not really react or respond to, because they're blankets, those are blanket statements, and I can't speak for my whole community, but I'm N of one. So I think creating those boundaries helped me to bring my authentic self to work and to feel safe in that space, that no one would take advantage of me or ask more of me than what I am capable of giving. So I believe in research. So I'm also trying to make sure that when I'm speaking about something or I'm giving advice on something, that it's rooted in something that's legit. So, and not just my own personal one person experience. So boundaries would be my thing.
I agree. I also think one thing that's been helpful for me, if I'm starting a new job or even being placed on a new team, is really trying to find out what the dynamic of the team is. Asking, is it okay to present new ideas? Because sometimes in certain situations, it's not okay to do that. But, just being aware of what type of work environment or work group that you're entering in, so that you can, because for me, it's very important for me to be in a situation where I can express my ideas and, that be okay. So, certainly trying to figure out, what environment I'm going to be in, what's the working style of, other individuals within that working group is really helpful. I also had a situation when I was early in my career. I think I was maybe 2 or 3 years out of college, and I was in a situation where I was in a meeting with an older gentleman. I was, I think, the only woman in the group, and I was the only person of color in the group. And so we were talking, and I wanted to present an idea that I had. And one of the responses I got was, well, I disagree with what you're saying. And, you're fresh out of college. You might not have this experience. You might not know. And, I have shoes older than you. And I didn't really know how to respond to that at that point. And so, I think I didn't really, at that point, of course, now that I'm in my 30s, I think I could better handle that situation. But I think at that point, I think I was 23 and I just, 23, 24, and I just didn't really know how to respond to that. Because that was when I was in a situation where this particular gentleman had been in his role for a while and he just didn't necessarily, it wasn't an inclusive environment where it was okay to express ideas. So, you know, I think for me, it's helpful for me to be authentic if I'm in a situation where my viewpoint and perspective can at least be heard. I understand it may not always be implemented and there might be feedback, but you know, it's important to at least be heard.
Tanisha, I'm going to comment because I had a similar situation where at my annual review, I was basically like, you know, in Hamilton, when he says like, talk less, smile more, I was almost given that feedback of I should speak less. And maybe I think, I guess like think before I speak and really have poignant things to say, which made sense, but at the time felt like a personal attack on my authentic self.
Can I just add two things to that? We could probably spend all day talking about those moments. That could break some people, if we're being honest. The question that we were answering when a few of the others joined was, what do you put in place so that you can bring your authentic self to work? And I think a filter, you got to put a filter in place, and you got to put a mentor in place. And the mentor is going to help with the situation that Tanisha just talked about, where you're in a room and somebody makes a comment like that. And so you might not be able to respond in that moment. And your response might not even be professional. What they did wasn't professional, but you don't respond to unprofessionalism with unprofessionalism.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
a mentor might need to like coach you through that. And if it was something that you were offended by and you need to take to the next level, a mentor might help you navigate the waters at your company. When you work for a corporation, gosh, it's so different because you want to be your authentic self, but you represent the corporate brand. And so sometimes that conflicts because your viewpoints, you might not feel like are represented in the room, and you want to speak up about that. And so there's a way to do it. And, you know, so I think, and you might be like, I don't want to work for a company that doesn't respect my viewpoints or doesn't, you know, that's not vocal about what I believe in. You know, during last year and all that was happening with our community, you know, we had debates about Black Lives Matter and like, what's public and what's not, and what do we fight for? And like, so anyway, so all these conversations, I think all speak to authenticity and your personal beliefs. And, but all that said, it takes a lot of time and a lot of mentors to help you figure it out. So you don't feel like you're compromising your true self at work, but then also the filter. And so some people really don't mean to be like offensive, and some people do. And so I've learned over the years when to check people and then when to be like, I'm gonna hold that one and figure out another way to talk to you about that on the side, because I don't want to do what you did to me, which was to degrade me or to make me feel bad. And so I've found ways to filter what happens. Some things are like me being like, wait, that didn't feel right. But was that because of my race or because of my gender? Or because of my age, or was that, no, like legit, this wasn't a meeting for me to talk. Like but it takes a long time to figure that out. And I remember talking to my manager at the time, and I said to him, like, listen, if I didn't have a filter that my parents helped to build with me over the years, I would be perpetually sad, because so much feels like an attack on your gender sometimes, or on your race. So I'd say put filters in place, but your mentors can help you to establish those filters for a corporate environment for sure. And don't compromise who you are and your voice, but like there's a way to use it sometimes that's more effective. So yeah, I would just throw those 2 points out there.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in a little bit to tie on to what you just said. So I think bringing your authentic self to work can be challenging in the professional environment, depending on who you are authentically. It's really just a matter of style, one, and a lot of it is training, right? So one thing I did early in my career was I read a couple books. So one of the books is Crucial Conversations. And essentially, it's really simple tools that just help you effectively communicate and say what you need to say in a way that is neutral across any boundary, across any whatever. So you don't necessarily have to change who you are or what you think. It's just how you say it. sometimes can make all of the difference. So there are like things you could Google, things you could look up, and books you can read that can give you these really small, what seem to be simple tools that could go a really long way and kind of just help you sidestep some of these like issues that take a long time to get through and waste a lot of time and energy. So yeah, it's just tools, training, little simple things that if you put in a little work up front, it can prepare you for a successful career down the line.
And I think to your point, especially whenever entering a new space, there's always like a testing of the waters. I know this isn't the professionalism group, but sort of when it came to authentic self, I remember when I interviewed for my current job, I hid my tattoos, I took out my nose piercing, I took out hoops that I was wearing maybe at the job before, and I walked in. And then it was almost like this like breath of fresh air when the person who graded me like was clearly like a woman over 50 with purple hair. And then the next person who pointed me in the direction had like a very visible chest tattoo, and other people had piercings, and in the mayor's office. Because I assumed government, very, very like white people defined professionalism. And it's like, I think just as soon as I got in there, I was like, okay, I mean, I'm still glad that I tested the waters with like, because unfortunately with the first impression, I still went with that white male defined professionalism look. But immediately after that, I was like, okay, well, I am hot. I will take off this cardigan and I have a very professional dress, but now you can see tattoos. And it just helped me test the waters. And what I was very lucky about was at my job, they did like very first trainings that you do is like an orientation on the office. You can learn about all the different programs we run, as well as a workplace culture, like acknowledgement that included like, you know, everything from dress code to like how we expect everybody to be treated by each other. Because while we can't dictate how the public will treat us, we can set in respectful boundaries for each other, including like pronouns, always acknowledging them. And even I think to Ashley's point, when someone does something wrong, like the respect to take someone one-on-one to have a conversation about it, or like if someone new did genuinely accidentally misgender someone, kind of pulling them to the side and like their pronouns are they, them. And I think that sort of stuff also, the testing of the waters, I think helps in the beginning for you to kind of get a sense of where things are, until we get to the beautiful place where from the get-go, you can be respected for your authentic self. I'm so sorry that we're not there yet. We're working on it.
I am curious if the students have any comments on these points that were made. Haley or Nishad, do you have any thoughts if you want to chime in?
I don't really have anything because I'm a freshman, so I haven't had any like real life experience yet with like jobs or interviews, but like I've heard these types of stories online from reading about other people's experiences.
That's great. And I'm sure you'll be going into internships soon in the next year or two. And, you know, if all of these things kind of translate to entering, you know, I guess what you would call a professional work environment.
And kudos to you for joining something that may feel like, hey, I should do this when I'm a little bit further into my college career. I think this says a lot about you, that you'd be looking for this sort of information that early on in your in college. So, you know, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, because a lot of times freshmen don't come to career fairs or they don't go to sessions like this because they feel like there's nothing for them. But I do applaud you for looking into the information early. And by the way, INROADS accepts freshmen, hint, hint. So, you know, certainly feel free to reach out if you are still looking for an opportunity for the summer.
Okay, I definitely will. Thank you so much.
We have about 5 more minutes, so I'm going to hop out and join another room just to check it out, but feel free to keep talking about these awesome topics, and thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Too recently, that I think at the beginning of this year, it was like 560,000 jobs were lost, and every single one of them were women. And it's because, you know, they're the ones that are doing the caretaking right now. And how are you juggling a job while you've got kids that are trying to do online learning and they're trying to do everything? And what I will add to the conversation too is that I actually led a thing for Penn State on the topic of DEI and how do you even bring up diversity, equity, and inclusive like initiatives? How do you ask the question to a recruiter, to an HR about the initiatives that are being led? And it's a hard topic, right? I think about my own identity with my immigration status, that it's a protected status that I choose to disclose, you know, if I choose to disclose at the time of an interview. It's between my HR rep and myself when I go and give them the paperwork, right? But before that, to protect myself, I have the choice of disclosing it or not. And I think like it's really great to read up on the company's values and then to also like do the research. And I even mentioned it in the last breakout room. I talked to a lot of people of color before I joined staff at Teach for America, before I signed my offer letter. People within my networks that I knew had worked on staff, people that I had that I asked around, and I said, could I possibly talk to a specific person before I signed this offer letter? Because I didn't feel comfortable asking it of a hiring manager. Like I do not want the hiring manager to already see me as a problematic girl that was trying to find trouble within the company or within the organization. I just wanted to like get the real perspective from folks that like might have already had those like experiences. And you know, at Teach for America, we have affinity groups, and we actually have an affinity group specifically, or a resource group that's specifically for parents. And that advocate for things like childcare, for things like, I mean, we just have like unlimited PTO now because of the pandemic. And we understand that like mothers and fathers are now having to work 30 hours, but they still need to get paid the same, right? And how do we work with their schedules? And so, but again, this is all internal. This is not something you're talking about with your hiring manager. And I think like doing a little bit of research, trying, I mean, the amount of times I've connected with people that I've never met in my life, but that reach out on LinkedIn and they go, I'm trying to figure out salary. Can you help me out? I mean, I was bold enough to ask a white peer my first week at the job. And I was like, I don't know you much, but can you please tell me how much you make? Because we both come in with the same experience and I need to make sure that I am protecting myself. It turned out fine, right? But I think those are the things that like you do outside of hiring managers, because there's a power dynamic no matter how cool your manager is. It feels like there's a power dynamic, and it's just a matter of navigating those spaces.
Yes, thank you.
I guess I was just gonna speak. I was like, I rose my hand, but I'm not quite sure. But I think, Andrea, what you said was a really good point in terms of talking, like looking and like asking about the diversity at groups, because when I do interviews, or when I was doing interviews, my question was always, do you have any employee resource groups, or do you have anything like that? And something that my friends and I did, we came up with like a bunch of different questions we would ask during the interview process, but we all asked the same question. Well, it recently was, how did you support your people or Black employees or people of color employees during the civil unrest that happened earlier this year? And that's something that we always ask. And recently, some of the people who I interviewed with could answer. Now, my roommate actually asked this question for the job she just got recently. And the person who she asked could not answer the question at all. He didn't understand how to do it. Now, she went through like a series of interviews. She had like 3 people, and she got to someone who interviewed her who was of a color, and she told him that she didn't feel like the person who had interviewed her before answered that question correctly, and she wanted to know, she said that she felt comfortable enough with this person during this conversation to say, do you guys really help? Like, do you guys have any diversity at your company? And he honestly, I think that was the point that made them like her, because they were trying to do more diversity or like have more inclusion like have more inclusive people or be more inclusive. I'm not sure how I want to say this, but he said that her asking that question and really seeing how diverse the company was, he really liked her and he advocated for her to get that job. So I think that that's very important, because I definitely, when I do look for the jobs that I'm applying for, I look through the company and I see who is of color, and then I know this is just me, and then I connect with them, and then I ask them how do they like the company, or what they're doing at the company, or can I do an informational interview with you, even though I'm interviewing with the hiring manager. I want to see how they feel about the company.